There we go. All right. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for joining us this afternoon. My name's David. I'm going to be your host for the webinar, and today we're going to be discussing maintaining company culture with remote teams. So typically we like to do these events in person at the Xref office, but obviously given the quarantine currently, we're doing a remote webinar. And as much as I'd love to keep talking about myself, it's not actually about me. It's about my wonderful panelists. So I'm going to leave it to you guys to introduce yourselves and explain a little bit about what you do, and then we'll kind of jump into the questions from there. So go ahead, guys.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. I'm Bobby Moore. I'm a people and culture specialist. I work with teams to build and create a positive and inclusive corporate culture. I also specialize in some diversity and inclusion and workplace wellness.
Cool, and I'll go next. I'm Dean Delpeache. My role, well, I work for a company called Fiix Software. My role there is I'm the Senior Manager of Talent Acquisition. I'm responsible for all recruitment, all talent acquisition and attraction, and also I also wear the diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity lens at our organization, so I'm responsible for that as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Liana Gavrilkina and I am the head of recruitment at Clearbanc. We provide the fastest, most affordable way to fund your business, and we are the largest e-commerce investor in the world right now. We funded over 2,200 brands as of right now, and 8 times more women than a traditional VC. I was at Clearbanc and I got to scale us from about 40 employees to about 200 plus. And before that, I was hiring all across Canada for Scotiabank, built 3 departments across 3 different countries for a renewable energy company. So yeah, that's a little about me.
Great, and my name is Rob Catalano. I'm at all efforts. My video did not work, and I was hoping you would see the great COVID beard that I have compared to the picture that's on the screen right now, but that unfortunately will not be possible. My name is Rob Catalano, Chief Engagement Officer and co-founder at WorkTango. We help organizations hear the voice of their employees with very quick and easy pulse surveys. Spent the last 17 years building HR technology companies and on the HR consulting side of things. Super excited to be here. Thanks, Xref and team for having us.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you all for joining us. A couple, I guess, ground rules, more so just rules of engagement before we start. You've all been a part of Xref events in the past, so you sort of know the way we run things. It's an open discussion. We have a set of questions. More than happy for you guys to go on tangents or to work off of each other. Really, today's about getting your viewpoint and your experience and helping our listeners sort of understand what you guys are doing to help maintain that culture. So, you know, feel free to chime in when you need to. It's very unstructured, very informal. But without further ado, let's get into it. So we'll start with the first question. Why is culture so important for remote teams? I'll leave it for you guys.
Can I just remove the word remote from there?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I think it's even more important, but I mean, the idea of just, you know, culture is important regardless, but now we're in a situation where I think it's just even more heightened in not being able to connect with people independently. That was the first thing I thought of as soon as I saw that question.
Right on.
Cool. You gonna continue, Rob?
No, I want to leave it for you guys. I don't want to take too much of the, you know, the guy with the camera. No one even knows who I am.
Oh, wow. I guess I'll start. You know, I do agree with Rob, you know, that culture is just important in general. And I think now more so due to the fact that many of our organizations are on this mandatory work from home during this this pandemic, you know, really and truly getting across, ensuring that your values that you've built within, I would say, you know, the traditional office culture is so important to be captured while we're all working from home. And the main reason, at least from, you know, the experience that, you know, I have here, the main reason why is because you want to ensure that your organization continues to speak the same language and continues to function by that same language. Yes, we're all individuals, and yes, we all work in different teams, and yes, we all have different groups. But my hope is that, you know, the organizations that you either work for or strive to work for have a common language that can be spoken, and that's really kind of built from your values. And so, for example, here at Fiix, we have something called our Fixer values, and basically that defines every individual that we bring through the door. And our values are an acronym for the word Fixer, which is flexibility, initiative, intelligence, X factor, empathy, and relentlessness. And so when we evaluate candidates coming into the door, and when we continually work on engagement internally, we are constantly we evaluate by our values, but then after we are constantly reminding and pushing and having to the forefront, you know, our values. And so I think for us, especially going through what we've been going through, we've really held tight to that, and it's really helped us push forward. So I'll stop there so my colleagues can have a chance.
Yeah, I would agree with Dean, definitely. Now that we've shifted to this remote culture, it's even more critical to hold those values and goals, because they're gonna get things done, right? It's what tells individuals and teams how to prioritize, how to pivot, or when to pivot, when to persist. Otherwise, you just have a bunch of really smart people working really hard at really small pieces that never really become like that big picture. And an example from Clearbanc is our company culture is like that shared belief that it's our mission to help founders win. And 2 out of 6 of our values, I know 6 is a little bit too much, but 2 are speed and winning. So the product team, for example, at Clearbanc knows that if they're pushing out a new product for founders, it's more important to get that landing page out really quickly, to make sure that founders can start using that product as soon as possible, and spend more time on the research phase to make sure that it is helping founders win.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all of you so far in terms that it is a remote culture is a huge opportunity for companies to kind of put their values to the test. You know, it's one thing to say, oh, one of our values is collaboration, when you have all these amazing meeting spaces and cool tables and whiteboards all over the office. It's quite another to continue to value that collaboration when everybody is completely remote, working from home. And from an onboarding perspective, this remote culture and maintaining those company values that you establish, that people spend so much time establishing. From an onboarding perspective, you want new hires to come in and immediately feel like part of a cohesive, collaborative team, if collaboration is one of your values, for example. But it is an opportunity for those values to get put to the test from an onboarding perspective. As new people start, you want them to actually feel like they're getting to be part of the company, getting to live and breathe what it means to be a part of your organization, and maintaining this same culture that you had in the office or a remote version of it is so important in a time like this.
Yeah, that's good. I really like the answers. I mean, to me, one of the things that is really clear is that what the culture is what's left of the company after you phase out, you know, the ping pong tables and the cool workspaces and the neat offices, and that's what keeps the teams together. And I like to hear that you all have your core set of beliefs, and it's what's driving your teams, even though they aren't driving into the office every day. And Bobby, you actually touched on a really good point, which sort of leads into our next question about onboarding. Or not our next question about onboarding. We have a question about onboarding, but our next question is how you can sustain and foster a cohesive culture when we're working apart. And then we'll get to the onboarding questions. So up to you guys.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is kind of a lot of what I've seen companies do, and what we're seeing a lot of value in is just continuing the rituals you already had. So, you know, we have a daily tango every day where we bring the team together. Well, it's okay that people are sitting at home. We're still going to be able to do that. Any of the cues or other things that you do in an organization, whether it's recognizing those, we call them virtues or values, make sure you're continuing those items. So if you kind of have some level of normacy, despite everyone being at home and their environment changed around them, that's one thing we're really trying to do as a team, is making sure that that environment isn't changing much, and then also trying to make that home culture themselves as well. Like whether it's sending them, plans or things that people can do and kind of have that reminder that someone's thinking about them from a work perspective. So there's some of the small things I've seen us do that provide a lot of value and great feedback from our team, but we've seen other companies do as well.
That's so cute. Yeah, I agree. When we first went remote, we actually were like, let's test this out. Let's just do one day, and then we'll return back to the office and talk about what broke, so we can fix it. And we actually never went back because it worsened so quickly. But we scheduled an all hands 5 p.m. daily meeting because there was a lot of uncertainty and fear. And it's been great because it actually allowed us to maintain, like Rob mentioned, the quality of our in-person meetings. So we have a chirp culture at Clearbanc, and we still maintain that in like our Zoom chats while people are presenting demos or giving updates about projects. And now it's evolved into this kind of lunch and learn where we invite board members and experts like career coaches, as well as founders that we support. And it's a frequent reminder of like why we're here. And it serves as a great alignment tool.
Yeah, one thing I would say, like, that sounds really awesome, your lunch and learns, and kind of being able to bring people together in a way that isn't necessarily for a specific meeting. It's not just like the marketing team getting together. It's not necessarily just the development team getting together on their normal Zoom calls. I think that when we're apart, creating that cohesive culture is about sort of a lot of cross-pollination from different teams, people who you would normally see at the coffee machine, but you might not normally necessarily have a meeting with, creating opportunities for those kinds of connections, providing the tools for people to communicate with each other. There's things like Slack, Trello, Zoom, Google Docs, any kind of ways where there are places for people to communicate, I think is super valuable. And inputting tools like the Slack coffee bot, and then creating those virtual connections for people, just matching people up randomly in the office. And then also being really, really flexible with people's schedules, understanding that people are working from home, they have kids, they have caretaking responsibilities, and understanding that, yes, they're still working full time, but they might also be now being a full-time parent. And so I think that part of this creating a cohesive culture is creating a culture of understanding and flexibility, which Dean mentioned in Fiix's values as well. I think that that can really make or break someone's remote experience.
Cool. I probably, and thanks, Bobby. I probably, the only thing I'll add to that, and coming from more of a macro view of, and looking in the context of the pandemic, is, I think it's very important for leadership teams, senior leaders, to cast a vision of the importance of people. And I think that, and so I don't say this because I work in an HR department. I actually mean this. In my opinion, one of the first steps to continuing to sustain that culture is make sure your people are good first. And that's literally just, whether it's through Slack or picking up the phone and just saying, hey, are you okay? How are you doing? How are you functioning? And when you get on the calls, you're hearing kids screaming in the background, or you're hearing whatever, and getting back down to that place where we could all be real humans, I think and then having your leadership team communicate that in all hands, and just say, hey, we understand you're real. You know what I mean? Because the ultimate thing you really want to do, what we're trying to solve in the end is, we want to continue to have productive, performing teams. That's it, right? And have strong performance. But you can't have that unless you have, or at least in my opinion, unless you're able to say, come down to the bare bones, you okay? Cast a vision. This is where we're going, and then we start working on all those different things that Bobby and everyone else said. And I think everybody gave great answers, So that's kind of my thoughts on kind of at least where we started, bare bones.
One thing that just triggered that is that from a leadership perspective, I found that if you can have some level of empathy training for leaders, understand people, it's tough, homeschooling kids, having to feed meals, and have to do work day in and day out. I find that really helps. But then the other part of that idea, Dean, you said about leaders, is that, yeah, it's important for leaders or executives or HR to sustain and foster culture, but you have other employees in the organization that can be champions as well. Like at our company, we have, we used to have Friday drinks, and now they turned it into online trivia. I didn't know anything, but there's this thing called like 73 questions. You ask celebrities 73 questions in their house, and they record it. And someone on our team said, we're going to do 37 questions. And now we're learning more about our colleagues. So we kind of opened it up and said, listen, this is not just our culture to sustain and foster. This is, or sorry, not just ours as a leadership team or HR, it's yours, it's everyone's. And I found when you gave people that little bit of encouragement, a lot of cool things start happening to build that cohesive culture.
Nice.
That's so fun.
I'm gonna steal that
Yes.
one.
I was gonna say,
I really like that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Very good.
I think there's a lot of like super fun ways to bring people together in these times. You could set up like a water challenge. Like I know there's apps where you can like track how much water you've drank in the day. I would say, there's also the opportunity to set up something like a step challenge or a get outside challenge, just little ways. And not everyone's going to participate. There's always going to be those people who are going to roll their eyes at it. But even that brings people together. People thinking like, oh, that culture specialist has set up another fun challenge for us again. Even that's creating those conversations. Even that's creating those like, like if their conversations are just like making fun of me and my like rah sis boom bah challenges that I've set up for people, I think that even that any opportunity to create conversations outside of just work focused, topics, I think is really, really valuable for maintaining and creating that cohesive culture. Because we all have our work friends, but we don't all keep in touch with our work friends outside of work. And this is an opportunity to create opportunities throughout the day, like 9 to 5-ish, for those conversations to take place, and really be able to say to your colleagues and the people you work with, like, hey, that's okay for you to be casual with each other right now, and connect for conversational reasons, not necessarily for project management reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it. It's really good too. I mean, one of the things that we found, specifically on an Xref standpoint, because we're a global company, our CEO is based in Australia. One of the first things he did when things started going south with COVID is said, look, let's all jump on a weekly call and just see how things are going, right? And it's really proliferated more of a quality of communication focus, which is good, right? I mean, when you're hopping on a call with people, it doesn't always have to be about like, hey, where are we at with this? Where are we at with this? It can be about, hey, how are things going? Like, how's your team, doing? What are some of the challenges you're facing? And I like that. It's worked out really, really well. The question that I alluded to earlier about onboarding has finally appeared. So it's a good one now, because I do know that some of you guys are still hiring, and I know from our standpoint, a lot of our clients are still hiring as well. So what can you do to impart this amazing company culture on folks that are coming on board during a remote period, or perhaps they're just remote by nature? What can we do to help impart that culture and make that easier for them?
I'm happy to give my thoughts. And we're one of the lucky organizations that are still hiring. But one of the things that we've done, shifted a little different, is focus on a couple of things. One is on storytelling, and our storytelling are driven by our virtues. So it's making sure that when that person joins, everyone that they meet with, because you get to meet with everyone, and it might take a while, but get that quick 15-30-minute talk, and helping the rest of your champions in the company tell stories about how people are living the virtues. And I find that kind of ties them better into the culture that they're joining, because it might be new and different for them. But then when it's a little hard to get people to do one-on-ones in a remote work environment. So we just do love bombs. So whether it's on Teams or Slack, or whatever tool you have used, just get people throughout their first day, kind of get them part of the culture, and whatever your culture is, love bomb them with messages and gifts and all kinds of fun things. And it's just something cool to be able to let people know that they've joined a group of people that, even though they can't see them, they can connect in some level.
Did you call it Love Bomb?
Love bomb, yeah.
I love it.
That's
Thank
so
you.
fun.
I love that. Love Bomb. Cool.
Yeah, I think something that you kind of mentioned, Rob, is, this is sort of another way of saying it, but like filling their calendar when you join a company and you first log into your new work email. It's so exciting when you see that there's already a bunch of calendar invitations in there. And obviously there's going to be meetings that are working meetings, but if somebody were to join a company and there's already a bunch of just sort of like, hey, you should meet this person from our senior leadership team. Here's a one-on-one that's already scheduled in your calendar. They've already accepted this time. And just have a bunch of things like that, so that when they're joining, when you're first joining a company, there is a lot of downtime, just kind of like floating, figuring out like, okay, I should be working on my Trello board right now. I think filling their calendar so that they do have a much more structured day, at least in those first few days, with meetings and just with creating opportunities for those connections to get to know their coworkers. And then I also think this is going to sound kind of whatever, but I think a buddy system is really valuable in these remote onboardings as well. You know, saying to somebody who's been at the company for a couple of years, or maybe who was new more recently, you know, hey, Dean's joining on Monday. Can I set up a coffee for you two at 11? And then you're going to be Dean's go-to person throughout the day if they have any questions just about life at this organization, so that they know that they can reach out to someone who's not necessarily, I know Dean's in HR, but let's say it's a not HR person, so that they don't feel like they're constantly asking HR all these HR questions. They can ask a peer these questions. I think that's something that we can all kind of start to do with these remote onboardings.
I would pay to be Dean's buddy, please.
Oh my God, Rob, you could be my mentor. Done. You are official. Yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly add to that. Like, I mean, first of all, Rob and Bobby made very, very good points. It's really challenging to add. You know, I think if you can, as much as possible, just you know, make your remote onboardings as similar to your physical onboarding. To try to do that. So an example. Because like Bobby could do a great example with the calendar. That's really, really awesome. A great example actually could be even just your lunch. Like if so for example, if you are able to still, you know, create some expenses, you know, send a literal virtual skip the dishes, you know, gift card, you know, like a day or so before, and literally say, hey, your lunch is on us. You know what I mean? Whatever that is, $25, and then during lunch though, right? You book it in a way so that person could actually have lunch with the team virtually, and if you have someone kind of leading that, you know, it could be icebreakers, getting to know the team, you know, blah 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 blah, and just talking and rapping and how you doing and stuff like that. So try to make it as natural as possible, because one of these days we're coming back to this office, or to your offices, right? So just make it as natural as possible, and do what you can. Just do your best.
Nice. I like it. I like it a lot. So it leads well sort of into our big question, I think, of the webinar, which I know a lot of people prior to the webinar had asked us. But how can companies prepare for, you know, the new normal after COVID-19? And obviously, the new normal is definitely up for discussion. And I'm sure everyone has their own opinion of what that's going to be. But from your standpoint and your experiences, what do you guys think? Like, where, you know, what can companies do to prepare for that? What's that going to look like, and sort of, you know, what's going to happen moving forward?
Yeah, I can take that one. One of the biggest lessons that we've actually taken away from this is that adaptability is crucial. And we've kind of boiled it out to 3 principles, which is care, customers, and cost. So it's continuing to find the right ways to care for your employees, like Dean mentioned earlier, understanding how our customer needs are changing, and cutting non-essential costs.
It's big.
Cool.
One thing that I think companies just need to do, and it might sound weird, is actually do a retrospective. Like, find out what's going well, what isn't, and what you need to improve on. Because if you can't get aligned as a HR team, leadership team, whoever it is, on, like, you know, what you have to fix or not fix, or what maybe is working really well, I think getting that alignment and retrospective is a really good first step. And then I had another thought, but I'll think of it when someone else talks.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you, Rob. Doing a retrospective, or in the form of like an anonymous survey for the entire team, to really reflect on their time working remotely, and let everybody know, let the leadership team, let the HR team know, you know, how they felt about it. And I think that those questions should include their work hours, their work environment. You know, we have people working out of 400 square foot condos, and then we have people working out of like their own little private home office where they can close the door. And kind of really get an idea of like, should we implement a work from home strategy if this company doesn't have one already? And if so, what does that look like? I also think we're going to start seeing a lot more companies shifting to being more flexible with working from home, and maybe even more companies shifting to smaller offices with hot desks. Because I think we're seeing how capable everybody is from working from home at this point in time. And I think that it would be really interesting for companies to maintain that flexibility, and as they're onboarding someone, depending on the team that they're on, asking them, how do you feel like about working from home? Do you want a designated workstation, or this is what we do with your team? How do you feel about that? And kind of getting an idea of how people work best, and then maybe even being able to, save money on rent at an office, or having less workspaces, having a more flexible workspace and things like that. I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
So Bobby, that was actually the point I was going to make, and which is silly because that's what I do for a living, and that's what we do help companies do. It's like understand the voice of employees, and it's not just about their sentiment about remote work or on the COVID situation. It's their sentiment around what does this mean getting back into the workplace, or even their psychological health and safety. I actually threw a link in the chat. I think it only goes to organizers there's 4 templates there of what you should ask.
I think we can push it out to attendees, Rob. If you're okay with that, I think we can probably push it out to everyone who's listening there.
Yeah, because the reality is new normal for some people, like without understanding your team and employees and what they're going through, it's gonna be really hard to get there. A really good example is there's some companies that are being forced to go back to work, but there's people that have children at home that their daycares aren't open. Well, now what? Like I don't have the option to get back to work because I can't afford the daycare, or there's not actually a service available in my area. So understanding the sentiment of employees and whatever the next steps are, I think is the after the retrospective is probably the next important step.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'll say is Rob kind of stole my thunder there. Probably you too, Bobby.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, no, I can't agree more. Like you just need to know what your employees are thinking about the whole thing. I think for us, what we did is in the beginning, we cast a vision of what the organization's going to look like afterwards, and how we want to position ourselves coming out of COVID. But then at the same time, too, you have the real emotions of your employees. So what we did is we put out what we'd call, I guess, a COVID-19 survey. And so if anybody wants access to that, David, I can probably get a link and give access to that as well. Cool. We literally put out a survey, which is pretty detailed to really understand, things like, do you want to come back to work? And, do you want to ride on the TTC? Do you want to take the go? Like as simple as that. Obviously not a little bit more professional sounding, but and understanding people's home situations and are you okay still? We've recently put that out. So if we ever have a follow up to this, I'll tell you what the percentages were later on.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to sort of hear how some of the things you guys are getting back from that, and what that new normal looks like, and what a lot of people are are thinking about that. All right, guys. Well, if no one has anything else to ask, we are into our last question, which is very simple. It's more so a piece that I'd like to sort of give some of the attendees something actionable, something that they can take back to their teams and say, hey, look, I learned this on the webinar. But from where we stand, what's one piece of advice that you'd like to give to any HR folks or talent folks out there that are going through what you're going through, that are going through what we're all going through?
Maybe I'll start if that's okay with everyone. This is kind of where I put on my inclusion lens, and I think one thing that's really, really important, especially during now, is the word equity, and making sure that all employees really, really don't feel like, or rather, companies should take the stand to make sure there's not a lot of inequity within the organization. So all that to really, really, really say is, really, really put your people first. That's kind of really my thoughts. Communicate with your people, grassroots, bare bones, whether it's getting on the phone, getting on Slack, understanding their needs, understanding what they need. I'll give you a real life example. I'm a father with 2 kids. One of my children have, need a lot more support. And you can only imagine it's 11 o'clock. I have a big meeting. I've got a desk beside me with my son, who I've got to work with as well, during this time. This is real life stuff, you know what I mean? And then by time 3:30 comes along, I just want to throw down my computer and not want to work anymore. You know what I mean? But you got to imagine 4 o'clock comes, I still got to work with my son because he still needs help, right? So the reality is people are going through these real things. I want to get out of my house, I want to go somewhere else and leave. These are real challenges. That's what I mean. Get down to the bare bones, man. Get to your people. Hashtag people first. That's my deal right now.
Yeah, I would definitely, that would be my first piece of advice as well. Like, be empathetic to people, because we're like, this is not natural. Being in quarantine is not natural for social beings. So I agree with Dean. You can't steer wrong, leading with empathy. That would be my advice too.
Yeah, and on top of, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Rob.
I was going to say, on top of a people first perspective, I think, you know, right now, as we're still dealing with this quarantine, with isolation, there are a lot of companies doing layoffs. And I think taking a people first approach to those layoffs is really important as well. I know
Yeah,
it's a sensitive topic and it comes up a lot on social media, and you know, there's a lot going around, but I think one of the most valuable things you can do when you're laying someone off is providing them with a little bit of insight or a couple resources with places, with companies you know that are hiring, or helping them set up conversations with people who can kind of like mentor them through this, or mentor them, or do some career coaching, or setting them up with helping them join this. There's this list going around of people, of top talent who are looking for opportunities. And then also, if you have the capacity to, writing a reference letter. You can even write, you know, I work with Avery Francis on Sunday Showers, and she put out a Medium post today, and one of her large pieces of advice, I'm borrowing this from her, thanks Avery, is to even just have a generic reference letter that goes out with everybody who you're letting go, saying this person was let go because of COVID-19. It was not a decision based on their performance. I would hire them again, and I recommend them to any company. And that way that person has that little piece of paper that they can, or email or whatever, that they can bring with them as they're continuing this job search. Or like when somebody is being let go, reach out to the people on their leadership team and, you know, provide them with a little template to write a LinkedIn recommendation for that person. You know, I think that a lot of people get a little embarrassed about layoffs, or it's a very sensitive subject, and they kind of want it to just kind of like happen and then like move forward. But I think that we shouldn't be scared to talk about it, and the more empathetic we can be in those situations, the better.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, if I think about advice for HR and talent folks, build a culture of trust. I mean, it's embarrassing to see this, what is it, the purchases of monitoring software, are people on their computers or not, and things like that happening in organizations. I think it's brutal. These people are at home, they have other obligations they have to take care of. And if we don't trust our employees, they won't come back to your new normal, whatever new normal you create for them. I don't know where I read this thing and I heard it once, but like, you're either building trust or you're eroding it. There is no in between, right? And the end of the day, if you're gonna have to monitor them or make sure they're sitting at their desk or get pissed off because they weren't available in the Slack chat when you asked them to, that's not a great way to build a culture given this type of world. So in terms of the advice, you might have that, but build a culture of trust for leaders. One story that I found worked really well was that as human beings, we make 35,000 decisions a day. No leader can manage that. No HR team can manage that. You hired them, you probably trust them already. They're going to make a lot of decisions, whether they're at home or in the office. If we don't trust our people, then they're, you know, then we just have the wrong people, or we have to figure that out. I think that's a bigger issue in itself. But that would be my advice. Like, let's make sure we trust our folks to do the right things. That's why we hired them.
I agree.
Yeah, I like that. You see a lot of memes right now with people who've got like fans connected to the to their mouse that moves it, so it looks like they're doing work, activity monitors. And yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, it would be, yeah, it'd be a very interesting place to be, to have to put up with that. Guys, that rounds off the questions that we have for you. I mean, in effect, sort of the end of the webinar. Is there anything you'd like to leave with our attendees? We've got about 200 folks online right now. Anything that you want to say before we hop off? Anything you want to impart on them before we go?
Can they ask questions or no?
The question chat is open. So if they have questions, now would be the time to pop them in, and I'll ask for you guys. So I'll leave that open as well. Although I'm taking a look. Nothing coming through just yet.
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing that I just came up when the question came up about how do you get company culture during the remote onboarding world. And again, I'm just kind of seeing some other organizations do this really well, was that, you know, obviously you're sending people these resources to their house, whether it's a computer or a laptop or other things. One of the things I found that was pretty cool was, before a person onboarded, there's some simple questions about things they like what's your favorite candy bar, what's your favorite this, what's your favorite that, and then sending those really personalized touches to that individual with that whatever you're sending them, like their laptop. And it just kind of it was just a really nice way. And then if you think about company culture being that card you leave on their desk when everyone signed it, you can't do that anymore. There's a lot of really cool online kind of jib jabs or cards or things like that, where I thought if I was starting and I knew I was going to connect with these people, that would be quite impactful for me. So those are two other ideas I've just heard other people do, and I always say R&D it, rip off and duplicate if it works in your culture.
Yeah, we actually, so some of the questions are coming in now, and that is one of the questions. One of them would be, do you guys have any recommendations for good online sites to facilitate group activities, that kind of stuff?
Oh, what is the name of that game that you can like draw things? Oh, this is horrible.
The house party?
No, not House Party. I love House Party though. But no, there's another one that you have, like, I don't have it, but people with Xboxes have it, and then you can hook it up to the computer as well. And it has a whole bunch of different games. It has like apples to apples on there. I know it sounds like House Party, but it's something else, and I'll think of the name when it comes to me. I'll name it. It's cool.
Nice.
But Zoom has Pictionary, and that's kind of fun.
Oh, really?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Another good question I think is really good on here. So what suggestions do you have for engagement and keeping the culture in place for employees who are not working right now, who have been laid off? Like what suggestions do you have for those folks that are maybe job searching, or they're on like furlough, they are working technically but not actually working? Like, what are some things that people can do for that?
Yeah,
we've organizations. Okay.
We actually had a couple of people take some time off, whether it's because they have kids and their partner's not home or any other reason. And what we do is we actually send them invitations to their personal emails that they can join if we're having like a really fun lunch and learn that has nothing to do with like work. Like when we had the mental health coach come in. We also have like trivia nights as well, and we invite them back for those moments. And we send like kind of like a snapshot of what's happening to keep them in the same loop. So that way it's not like, hey, we're deactivating everything, you're taking time off, we'll see you when we see you.
Yeah,
actually, that's interesting. Like, and I don't know, depending on the situation, I heard a company said that they had to let people go. It was meant to be temporary. And so what they did is they just didn't kill their access. Like, listen, like our goal is to come out of this, and it was a really telling signal to those individuals that like it's not like I'm cut off an email, I can still be involved. And they got really great feedback from the team that it happened to. So that's one thing I would think about if we had to go down that road. But I thought it was just pretty cool. I never, a good way to really be clear about your intention when it comes to laying someone off temporarily.
I like it. There's a bit of an anecdote in here, which is pretty funny actually. So someone said they did a virtual lunch for a new hire, and 1 month later they were able to catch up with that hire and sort of ask how it went. And apparently he said it was the most awkward meal he's ever had. So their suggestion, which I get that for sure, can definitely go either way. They're suggesting that someone lead with some icebreakers or send the skip the dishes vouchers, and the team can reconvene after maybe and talk about it, which I thought is good advice. What works for one might not work for all. But it sort of leads into another question someone has, which is, what are some of the cool elements you can bring for remote working culture? I know we've talked a little bit more about things like the trivia night and stuff like that, but things making meetings more engaging and improving the satisfaction of those like remote meetings that maybe you typically had like a Monday morning stand up, but now it's a Monday morning Zoom. Like, what are some things that you guys are doing to make that a bit more engaging and more, not someone's sitting there just eyes glazed over waiting to talk?
If it's someone's birthday or anniversary, make sure everyone has a virtual background of that person in their background. It's a lot of fun.
That's cool. That's cool.
I think too, and like this doesn't really go with that question specifically, but you know how there's that joke that it's like, oh, there was another meeting that could have been an email. I think that this is a time where some meetings could be emails. Like if you fill your day with Zoom meetings all day long and you don't actually need everyone who's invited to that meeting to be at that meeting, I think this is a time to do more one-on-ones and less like mass meetings. So yeah, cool company stand up every week I think is awesome. But beyond that, I think this is an opportunity for us to turn some of those meetings into emails, so that, and of course you should make your meetings cool, but if you feel like you're trying really, really hard to keep people engaged in your meetings, it could be that some of the people don't need to be at that meeting. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean that in the nicest way possible.
Yeah, it's super easy. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We actually started keeping it a secret who's coming to our all hands, and they have to come and join to find out who's going to be on there. And you never know if you're going to be called on to give an update on something. So things have an agenda, but not so much that everyone knows exactly what the meeting will be.
Nice. Yeah, it's good. I was just going to say that it's very easy to start having things just blend in with sort of the white noise when you have a day full of Zoom calls. You're like, okay, what is this going to be about? Does it really need to be a Zoom call? Does it have to be a meeting? Can we just do like an email? So now I'm on board with that. It's great.
Actually, can I just comment on that real quick?
Yeah.
No, those are like I really actually appreciated that thought. And I think there's a really good answer in there. Like, don't overdo it. You don't have to. It's like what Rob said about trust. Like, trust your employees. Like, you don't have to have Zoom meetings all like every day. Zoom meetings filling everybody's calendar, which leads me to this point. Give your people times to have breaks, like in the day. Like, it's okay. Like, give them time to take a walk, give them time to get outside or do whatever they have to do. And I'm going to tell you why I say this. It's actually from an employee. We had we had we call it Crescendo Connect session, and it's basically just to talk about different topics on diversity. And one of our employees said something that I thought was really, really phenomenal. He said, I take a course after work, and he said, I cannot stand Zoom after a while because I'm zoomed out, and then I got to get on this and do a course. So think about it like that. Like, your people after work, they could be on different Zoom calls that you have no clue, right? So unless it's so my thoughts are, obviously there's going to be necessary meetings, but when it's not necessary, forget it. Just leave it alone and give your people a break.
Mm-hmm. And going off of that, on that Zoom topic and the breaks and not making everything a Zoom call, and another thing I want to bring up is the video portion of the Zoom call. I think it's great sometimes, but I think that creating a culture where it's not expected that your video is on is also really important. And I'll say that for a few reasons. Some offices are casual, some are not. If you work at an office that's not casual and I'm a woman, I would normally wear makeup to work or like do my hair for work. If I'm working from home, one of the luxuries is that you don't have to do that. But very often when women stop wearing makeup, literally, like, let's say you go to a workout class at lunch, you come back to work, it's so common for someone to be like, are you feeling okay? Are you tired? Because you're not wearing makeup right now. And this is this is a very specific issue, but purely from a normal work appearance standpoint, if you are now working from one of the luxuries is like, cool, I'm gonna work in my sweatpants or my leggings or my hair tied up or whatever. And then you have to jump on a Zoom call with your CEO and it's like, okay, cool. Like, all right, like, let me make sure I look like I would at work. And it sounds superficial, but it's something that people do think about. Like, if you go on Twitter, you'll see people saying like, do I put makeup on for my Zoom call? Yay or nay? And so I think that creating a culture where those videos aren't expected all the time, I think is also something that's pretty valuable.
This is why I don't turn on my videos.
As a guy who does his hair for work, I get it 100%.
There you go.
I'm on board with that, absolutely.
I'd love to add a comment to that, because one of the coolest things I think I've seen, in the last couple of weeks, is there's a company out there called Shiny Docs, and I saw it because I'm part of the people group, that Slack group. And what they did is they gave backgrounds, like Zoom backgrounds or whatever they have, to their staff that said, if you have to show up to these meetings, and maybe they're mandatory, maybe they're not, but put a background that describes how you're feeling. If it's green, hey, you're good. Like, you're feeling great. If it's yellow, you're borderline right now, right? You don't need help. You're just on the position. You might not want to, engage in having fun or those types of things. If it's red, it's just like you're struggling, or, red, don't ask, that type of thing. And I found it's super cool, because now you don't have to play a role when you're on video or be that attentive or whatever it is, depending on how you're feeling. So taking that kind of psychological kind of health and safety and idea to these virtual meetings that are pretty uncommon for most people, right? Like at the end of the day. And I just thought it was a really good way to get people to tell you how they're feeling when they may not be comfortable doing so. Yeah, it's in a Slack group, so I don't know if I can share with people, but look up Shiny Docs, some cool stuff there.
Yeah,
Cool.
you
Thanks.
can
I
also
like it.
set statuses to your Slack, so that if people are parenting or they're doing something and they can't attend to a meeting or answer a Slack, they'll put like parenting, working out, so that way they can have those breaks without feeling like, oh my gosh, what am I missing? So yeah, that's great.
I like it. Very cool. Well, guys, that's it for our time here. I'm getting the flag down from the team that we're coming up on time. So, is there, like I said, any sort of closing remarks that you guys want to leave before we say thanks to the folks who chimed in for us?
Maybe the only thing I'll say is thank you, David, and thank you, Jenna and the Xref team for putting on a great webinar, and my colleagues, Bobby, Liana, and Rob. Awesome job. And I'll just add, like, best place if you ever want to reach me is LinkedIn, so you can just reach me on LinkedIn. Feel free to add me. I do my best to connect with as many people as I can. Would love to chat further. That's from me.
Cool. Thanks, Dean.
Ditto.
Yeah,
Ditto.
same for me. Yeah, ditto.
Right. Easy
Well said.
enough. Well, yeah, awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. As always, your experience and your knowledge is such an asset and a value for us. And also, thanks so much to the attendees. Thanks for jumping on. We'll send out a quick webinar survey after this for you guys to fill out. We did record this, so you'll be able to download it as well and have access to it and share with your team. And stay safe, everyone. Hope you're doing well, and keep your head up. Hopefully, we'll be able to chat in person soon. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Take
Bye.
care, everyone. See ya.
Bye.